Hello. I'm over here hiding in the corner now. It's me, Andrea. Alrighty, so this morning is a special morning. We are doing our art panel. So can I have our panelists please come and join me up at the front? 3 chairs, you can choose whichever one you like. Art is really important to this community. You can see as we just had that beautiful art. Well, it'll be a stained glass window, won't it, Pamela? Yeah, we're going to display it up in the window here. And we've had other art projects, this beautiful quilt and other quilt projects. So we thought that this would be a good topic for this community to discuss. So as maybe some of you have been here for panels before, but I'll just quickly explain what we were going to do this morning. We have 3 questions, and I will read the question out, and then each panelist is going to have a couple of minutes to respond to that question. And then after that, we will open it up to the community. If you have a question you would like to ask, then we'll have like 5 to 10 minutes at the end, and you can ask your question. So be thinking of that. Yeah. Does that sound good? Do we have anything else? Okay. Wonderful. Alrighty. Question number 1. What is art to you, and why does it matter? Or what is its purpose? To you personally, and to the larger community. So, sorry, I should have actually introduced our panelists first, or do you want to introduce yourself? Okay, I'll introduce. So Daryl is sitting at the end here. Hi, Daryl. I mean, I don't know everything about these panelists, so it'll also be interesting for me to hear from them. But Daryl, as far as I know, you are a musician, and you work, okay, yeah, sort of, kind of, okay. And your profession is within sort of the music industry, is that correct? Sure. Okay. Okay. And then Pamela, for those of you who don't know, she is the microphone. You want to test that out?
Hello?
Oh, and just... Sorry, I should say, I'm just saying this about Daryl. This isn't like a prerequisite. We're just excited to have you all here on the panel to share your thoughts on art. So, Pamela, you are the pastor here. Everyone probably knows Pamela. She's here. And then Heidi is Paul Thiel's wife. She's also her own person, but, just her connection to the community. Very intelligent, wonderful, fantastic panel. Very excited to hear from all of you. So, yes. Okay, so... do you want me to read that question again? We're good? Okay, I'll read it again. Sorry, I've confused things. This is my first time facilitating, so, a little rusty. Okay. What is art to you, and why does it matter? Or what is its purpose? To you personally, to the larger community. And so each panelist, too, you can take that question and answer it however you want. Yeah.
I'll go first by popular demand. I think it's the human condition to feel alone in life. Mm. And to me, art is a way of understanding that other people often have the same feelings and problems and questions that we do. And it's a way of helping us feel less alone in life. And it also helps us understand, like Christianity, our understanding is that there's an overarching story of history, and it can help us understand where our place might be in that too. Mm. So the thing about feeling alone, it's not meant to be trite, but a superficial example of feeling alone. A few years ago, I hope I don't offend anybody's sensibilities about this, but Donald Trump got COVID, and I had this terrible thought, and I was feeling so bad that I was thinking these things, and so finally I said to my husband, I had just had this terrible thought. I want Donald Trump to die from COVID. Isn't that terrible? My husband just started laughing and said, do you honestly think you're the first person who thought that? And I said, do you think other people think that? He's like, oh yeah. And anyway, that's just a sort of a superficial example, but it's kind of the idea of like, I don't know, I'm not as alone in the world, and I'm not as awful as I thought I was. And yeah, so that's why those are that. And the other reason, to me, the purpose of art is, I don't know if yours is your experience, but my experience is that it's pretty hard to find God sometimes, like kind of very tangibly. And so I find, like, especially like if you're trying to draw a flower or draw a hand or something like that, you have to be super observant. Like you have to really look at it to get it done accurately. Why are you looking up there? Oh, okay. And so, like when you look at it, then there comes this sense of awe when you're trying to illustrate this thing or draw it. And to me, it's like seeing little bits of God everywhere that are easier for me anyway to recognize than sometimes like God out there. That's my deal.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Pamela. Heidi?
I'm actually going to start with something I wasn't going to read, but it just goes with your thing about loneliness. It's about a kind of music called High Lonesome, where it's sort of this keening call of people after World War I, the soldiers who returned, who were so traumatized. But I feel like it applies. Art has the power to render sorrow beautiful, make loneliness a shared experience, and transform despair into hope. Music, like all art, gives our most wrenching emotions voice, language, and form, so it can be recognized and shared. The magic of all art, the ability to capture both our pain and deliver us from it at the same time.
Beautiful.
No, Brene Brown, who's a sociologist, I think. Sorry, I'm finding my notes. I feel like art is... I was thinking of a book called The Hideous Strength by C.S. Lewis. It's quite old, but in it there are sort of two opposing camps, and one is the camp that is going for technology and efficiency, and they've taken out all the trees in their garden of their headquarters, turned them into stainless steel, and they have recordings of birds, I think. And their big symbol of their life is this board of, it's pre-computers, but where everything just slides into everything else, and eventually you'll kind of get the perfect answer. And there's all these subcommittees, and it's very, very organized. And people are becoming, the goal is to become disembodied, to not become actually, to not have bodies anymore. And the other camp, sort of, is a hillside where this house, and it's filled with very, very different people who don't agree with each other. They fight over who's going to do the dishes. And there's all these animals that keep coming to them to escape from all the things that are happening to animals too. And so it's chaotic and it's full of life, and they're making meals together. And there's this one scene where they have this, there's this attic that's filled with like beautiful garments, and they all go up and they get robed for this banquet that they're making for each other. It's not, nobody's catering it for them. They're making the food themselves. And when they have this, when they go up there, they're all the people kind of become who they truly are, instead of that facade of, they become more human. And I feel like that book keeps coming. It's very old-fashioned. There's a lot of things in it that people would object to, but it's beautiful. So that, and then I also think a lot about there was this, since prehistoric times, there's been these caves where they've discovered people buried, and on their bodies are red ochre and beads, and people have buried people meaningfully. We make meaning from whatever we can as children and adults, and before we were cultured, civilized people. And anyway, that's
beautiful. Thank you, Heidi.
That's good stuff. So I'm really interested in neuroscience and how creativity connects to how our brains work and are designed. Because as we're made in the image of God, it would be really interesting for me to know what that means. Like how did that impact his design of us? Right? And I've got one of my favorite books we have at our house, if you ever come over, is this book called Why Cats Paint. And it profiles cat artists. And you wonder the whole time, like, did their owners just take their little paws and dip it in the paint and put it on the wall? You know, because it's almost unbelievable, but there's something unique about the human experience in this expression of what we call art. But I think what I want to point out today is that there's two pieces to it. There's the expression, there's the work that the artist does, and we see it in dance, we see it in music, we see it in story, we see it in poetry, we see it in there's more, all forms of expression. So there's this piece of some kind of mastery of tools and techniques to make something beautiful and to introduce an aesthetic element that captures our imagination. But then there's also the side of us as people who are appreciating art. There's some magic going on in our brains that I think is really remarkable. And one is, and you'll relate to this experience when you're watching a film and you're like just bawling because somehow you're able to experience what the actor, what that person is going through. And so art is able to not only communicate information and ideas, but emotion. And what it gives us as humans is the ability to try on another person's experience for a minute. Perhaps in a little more safety, we don't have to go through, being a ditch with the World War II soldier to experience some of what they're experiencing, right? So there's a little bit of safety involved, but it's a way our brain processes, and it's interesting when you look at it. We process dreams, we process imagination, we process reality, we process story in all the same parts of the brain. So when we're looking for patterns, when we're making meaning, we're attaching our own experiences, our own emotion, and having feels. So art, in that way, is a physical manifestation of empathy. It is how we walk a mile in another's shoes. Now, what's interesting is that the aesthetic cooked into art, those little details also influence how our brain operates, and it pulls us into the present. And what's interesting about the present is when you look at sort of rudimentary models of the brain science, that's more of a right hemisphere kind of activity. So, often you maybe have read a book like Drawing on the Right Side of Your Brain or whatever. That's it's getting old now. There's new science that shows more detail. But as a model, it's helpful just to understand. The right side of the brain doesn't care about time. It's timeless. The right side of the brain is super open-minded. Like, we are able to experience new ideas and new thoughts. We're not like trying to create a counter-argument and a new rational, logical argument why this is BS or whatever, like the left side of our brain is very interested in doing and protecting us and all of that, right? We're open to these ideas and feelings and moments. And I think it's an expression of the eternal. I think when we're right dominant, and everyone here probably has ever, written something or worked on a project and you lose track of time, it's because you're right brain dominant in that moment. It's timeless. And so it's this beautiful expression, this beautiful place to be in where we're far more connected to the world. Some people express it on an atomic level. I feel atomically one in those kind of moments. And so it's something to nurture. And the last thing I'm going to say, just because of where we are today, we're in this attention economy where Facebook and Instagram and TikTok are all trying to steal our attention. And the way they're doing it is they're giving us this little 3-second clip and then a dopamine hit, right? This pleasure response. And we get stuck in a loop. And the current language is we're zombifying America because we're creating addiction to attention to these little things. Here's what's great though, when you go back to the creation story and God says, I made the light. And what does he say at the end of every one of those little creations? And it was good. It was good in a way is a pleasure response. That is the dopamine that the Creator built in for us. So when we are pursuing moments of empathy, there's a biological benefit. It's like it's built in that we would want to do that. And it's been hijacked by Facebook and others, right, to make us, to addict us to being on their platform. So in a way, the antidote, the correction to, if you're concerned that things are going bad and your kids are becoming addicted to Facebook, is to find a new source of dopamine or the original source, which is appreciation of art.
Wow. Beautiful.
Wow.
That was amazing. You guys are all amazing. Thank you for each of you. Those answers were so wonderful. Alrighty, so we'll go on to the next question, which is, what inspires you to make art? Why do you create or enjoy art? And this conversation is going great.
Yeah, it is.
We have 20 minutes still, so we're good. Yeah, we'll just keep on going. Cool.
I guess mine is it feels like a little bit less articulate way of saying what he's saying. I like doing art. I love doing art because I get into what people call the zone, I lose, normally I'm really good at knowing what time it is. I don't wear a watch, and we can be out somewhere and I haven't seen a clock for a while, and I'll say to Paul, I bet that it's 12:34, and he'll go, no, it's 12:36. And I haven't seen a clock for 3 hours, but I've got to really, I can tell what time it is. When I do art, I lose track of time. And what I like about it is it brings me to a place of self-forgetfulness. And I got to tell you, I don't know about you, but my natural tendency is just to think about what's going on for me all the time. And it's pretty boring, actually, what goes on for me all the time in my thoughts and stuff. And so it's like this incredible, it gives me a while to not think about myself. And that is so liberating for me anyway. I can just think about other thoughts and not concentrate on myself. And in that way, I think art shows people's souls. It shows you who they are. And so when I look at other artwork, especially artwork I don't like, I look at it and think, what are they trying to say? What are they trying to show me about themselves? When I took an art history class this last spring, it was so fun. And the instructor, Jessica Cook from your church, made the comment about how, it shows your personality. And then I thought about my art. And it's all kind of nice and a bit whimsical. And I thought, that's my personality. Nice and a little bit whimsical. That was a little depressing, but...
And honest, I think.
Well,
yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm not fishing for compliments. I just thought, well, that's kind of like, that's my personality, eh? Okay. Anyway, that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Pamela.
I was biking here this morning and paused on the bridge because there was the harbor ferries were practicing their harbor ferry ballet that they do, and I feel like art is something that gives us. Well, I was thinking, I have this picture book that's called People. It's by Peter Spire, and it's one of the pictures is of a city where everybody's all the same, and everything's gray, and then it sort of bursts into this sort of, I don't know, New York or European, where there's everything going on, and everybody's different, and everybody's exotic, and I feel like that is, I appreciate that. I wouldn't say I am an artist, but I think having that as a, I don't know, being able to see things like the harbor ferry just gives life joy and meaning, and we are meaning makers and story makers, and I think that also comes, sometimes I wonder if the world was created out of boredom, and God decided to just make something. It's like when you make your children, allow them to be bored and don't entertain them. So many amazing things happen, and I think we all benefit from that. Like the concept of flow, which you were, I think, speaking about in your art. I was at a retreat recently, and we were making something called, it's a different Sunday school project. They're called Godly Play, and they have these boxes, and within the boxes are these stories. And we were all given a Bible story with a little picture, and then a whole array of crafts. And one person said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not creative. I can't do that. But everybody else gathered all these different things, and they had that story, and they sat there, and they worked with it, and they made. And whereas one person who was an artist, and the rest of us were just making things. And there was that silence that you get in a room when people are absorbed and taken out of themselves, that you were speaking of. And I feel like we need that so much in our lives, and we don't give ourselves the chance to do it. So be my. Oh, and also on your. I've been reading a book recently called Stolen Focus, and the person talks about, one of the things he talks about is how when we read fiction, we become more empathetic. And they said you could say that empathetic people read fiction, but there also is the study that when you read, adults read fiction to children, those children have more empathy than children who aren't read fiction. And the same thing goes for long movies, too. So I'm not trying to diss that. But
Very good. Thank you, Heidi.
All right, I'm going to kind of hijack this a little bit. I mean, because I think it's important to recognize that as image bearers, we are all artists. I grew up in a world where I was told, oh, the art is fine art. Art is what painters do. You know, maybe I identify more as a musician or something, and that's been an expression of art for me. But I've worked with engineers, and our community prayer was one of the most artful things I may experience today. But engineers are exercising ingenuity. They're exercising the same kind of craft and artistry that Michelangelo or whoever Leonardo DiCaprio, I don't know, like whatever, are exercising. And so I think it's important that we break down this distinction that there are fine artists, and then there's everybody else, or that our community prayer this morning was nothing other than genius poetry expressed through intentionality and collecting ideas and expressing them in an aesthetic way that we could all appreciate. The reason this is important, that everyone's spoken to, which I love, is because appreciating aesthetic and appreciating details changes the way our brain operating system works. Sorry, back to the brains. Brains. It pulls you into right hemisphere dominance. And so one of the, for those of you who've struggled with anxiety and you've maybe gone and sought help for that, you might have learned little techniques to help bring you into the present to manage anxiety. One of them is just feeling your fingertips or wiggling your toes in your shoes. You should try this sometimes when you're feeling overwhelmed, right? And what it does is it helps you notice, it brings your focus, your attention to these minute details, and it takes your mind off of yourself. Now, I think it's important to clarify what part of yourself it's taking your mind off of. When you're in the present, you are less encumbered by the anxiety of yesterday, your worry about tomorrow. It's like the consider the lilies of the field kind of moment in Scripture, right? Where it talks about, like, if I took care of the lily, why am I not going to take care of you? That is the expression of presence. So anyways, to me, inspiration, what inspires, I think, me and others to make art is almost secondary. And I think maybe even a better question would be, how can we inspire or encourage or nurture our communities, our people of faith, to become better at appreciating art, better at being in the moment, because that's where empathy, that's where I think we experience literally the peace of God, which again is an expression of the eternal, but that's just me. Okay, there you go.
Very nice. Thank you, Tara.
Presence.
Beautiful.
That's what art's all about.
Very cool. Okay, so the last question is kind of two questions in one. So we'll see, you can tackle it however you like and take, parts of it or however you want to interpret it. But the question is, what is the difference between sacred and secular art? Or is there just art? Why or why not? And what are your thoughts on engaging in art that is not Christian? Yeah.
This is my opinion. You might agree, you might not. I don't know who came up with that question, but it's a stupid question.
I came up with that question.
I just feel like it's like saying which trees in Victoria are Christian and which trees are not. It's like everything is made in the image. Sorry, did that hurt your feelings?
No, maybe I should clarify. I think there are some books or movies or things that people feel like I shouldn't engage in that because it's got witchcraft in it or it's got magic or something like that. I think that's totally fine. I don't take it personally.
Okay. I know.
Well, I took it from suggestions.
Yeah. Okay. So I think everything, as Daryl has said, is created in the image of God. So how can something be not Christian if it's created in the image of God? And I feel like when I look at people's art and art that is decidedly anti-Christian, is intentionally anti-religious, then I think, oh, well, that's interesting, because they're actually really engaging pretty deeply with their spirituality if they're going to bother to make artwork like that. And so I'm sort of trying to understand what it is. I do think that there are Paul has suggested, my husband, that we don't watch scary movies anymore because he doesn't like it when I wake up in the middle of the night screaming. You know? And so there's... Sorry, was that okay? Anyway, so... Anyway, he just said, perhaps this isn't the best movie for us to watch. And so like I'm saying that there are some things that I do kind of guard myself again because they have bad outcomes. I do think there's definitely age-appropriate things for children that are just far outside their understanding, and to expose them to that is traumatic because they don't have the ability to comprehend what's going on yet. So I do think there's that thing about age appropriateness, but I personally don't feel like there's stuff that is Christian or non-Christian. Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Pamela. I like it. I like your honesty. It's good.
Okay, I agree that all art is God's art, but I also feel like there are some things where I don't know how. I've been trying to articulate this, and as I've been thinking out, and it's hard. I have a Bible verse which I'm going to fall back on. Finally, my brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. But that doesn't mean, well, Thomas Kincaid, for example, or a safe art, I think. And I think sometimes, like Flannery O'Connor, who is a Southern Catholic writer, you write about what is grotesque and awful and disturbing, or show it, but again, I can't see that either. Because that's the way to show what is beautiful and what is true. So, and also I feel like when there's something behind what you're writing, when there is a moral core is maybe not quite the right word, but there can be an emptiness to what we look at or what we listen to, or a commercial, monetary part of it. And I feel like art, in all its aspects, can have an integrity to it that I would associate with faith. And I feel like there's so much in the Bible of all the different kinds of art, the imagery of the prophets, where they're saying horrible things, but using that, and the emotions of the Psalms, and then all the storytelling. And I wanted to end with talking about a book that I really love called My Name is Asher Lev. It's by Chaim Potok. He's Jewish, so not Christian. But the artist, a young artist in an Orthodox Jewish community in New York City, he's fascinated with art. He does it as a child, and then he eventually takes art lessons and with a man who is not Orthodox Jewish. And within that art, the artist teaches him about he has to paint nude women, for example, in a culture where people aren't really unveiled all the time. And at one point he realizes that the art he needs, the symbols he needs to use are from Christianity. So he paints his mother on a crucifix, and it destroys his relationship with his community. He's outcast from it. But I feel like we have Christian, all cultures, but I feel like for us, the Western cultures of Western art have so much in them that are art that kind of gets right to our soul, and that could be a trigger if it's a painful thing, but it also, it's like a shorthand of speaking, and I feel like using those Christian symbols is valuable within Christian art. So
Beautiful. Thank you, Heidi.
Okay, so I have not taken an art history course, but I have read a lot of books, and maybe that counts for Just a little bit? Yeah, enough that I can express a point of view. That is that it would seem that throughout the history of Christendom, Christian artists have often been more focused on adapting art forms of the times to introduce an element of the sacred to them for the purpose of worship, of telling our stories and all of that. And so there was a time where that made me kind of sad as an artist, because it was like, man, as a Christian artist, the best we're going to do is like be a cover band or something, or like it never feels as original, as unique as some of the art we hear out or see out elsewhere. And I think I'm just okay with that now. I don't necessarily see that as a giving up or a lack of artistic expression. It's more of a focusing on how can we express things in the sacred. That said, I have come to believe that humanity is expressing the light and the love of God all around us in the sacred and in the profane and in the secular, whatever word you want to use it. This struck me as a 20-something at the Place. I was around in the early days of the Place, and one of the songs that really got to me emotionally was Yellow by Coldplay. For those in the room that are over 40, you've heard this song, Yellow. Yellow doesn't ever acknowledge that God exists. It doesn't ever say anything, but in many ways what I heard in the lyric of the verses is an artist expressing kind of God singing a song to us, to his creation, about all the things that she was willing to do to relate to us. And the artist's response is, it's just yellow. I can't even put into words what this is or what it means to me, but it's something, and I'm just going to call it yellow right now, right? And I totally got it, and it ruined me. It spoke to me. And then I started looking for that everywhere, and I feel like I see it everywhere, but it's like punch buggy, when you start looking for Volkswagens, you see them everywhere, So anyways, all that to say, I want to read you a quote. It's from a week ago. It says, the quote is not going to be remarkable. It's the author, the person who said it, is going to be remarkable. I was baptized as a kid, but the Lord has been putting on my heart that I need to do it again. Today, thousands of people at Baptized California, which happened like last week, gave their life over to Christ, and it was amazing to watch. Alice Cooper.
Wow.
He's been a lifelong believer in Christ.
Wow.
So all to say that something that would have been so obviously profane to us at some superficial level, if you dig deeper, there might be, So I think the categorization is very human. We want to put things into boxes. We want to make meaning. That's exactly how we operate. But there's always more than what meets the eye. And so I think it's important as we appreciate art and as we create art that we're bringing some kind of intentionality to it, right? That we realize that people are going to have feels, and it's an opportunity for people to process things and experience things. And so I think as Christians, we want to bring the love of God and the light into our art. But I also, and I'm sorry to just keep coming back to the community prayer this morning, but like for me, that the community prayer almost brings like healing, because in the beauty and the aesthetic and the intentionality of the words that were pulled together, there's a correction that goes on in my brain, that the things that I felt or been frustrated with as an artist operating predominantly in the church, I'm reminded that with intentionality, some of those frustrations can be overcome. And what we find is in beauty is the light and the love of God. And so I'm grateful for that. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, so we've gone a little bit over time, but we're gonna cut the last song. Yep. Perfect. So let's open it up to the community. If anybody has a question that they would like to ask, I see that hand back there, Caitlin Bingham.
Yep.
That sounds good. Yeah. Yes, please. If you don't feel comfortable coming up to, you can just tell me and I'll say it through, but Caitlin's good.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to express this question, because I think that last question touches on it, and you touched on it a little bit, and that's the idea of like censorship, and this is something that is, like, my husband's a librarian, so like deals with that issue a lot. So I think my question is, like, do you think that there could be art that actually can cause harm? And if so, is it still art, or is art really, do we consider art to be what is expressing good, as opposed to what could express like ideas that are harmful? And like, is there a place for us to challenge art that might actually be expressing ideas that are harmful?
Right. That's a good question. Thank you, Caitlin.
And who gets to decide what's harmful?
I don't know about that, but I do know from taking this art history course that a lot of paintings that I thought were stupid actually are deeply meaningful if you understand the context of the painting, if you understand that the person was reacting to the war in Kosovo, or they were reacting to this particular idea. And so that's, yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that there is wisdom or thought, anyway, in any piece of art. But censorship,
good question.
my personal thing is lean away against it. But, yeah. Anybody else?
I had a friend, a neighbor, who was a witch, and she didn't like her children reading Harry Potter because there was so much meat in it.
Interesting. Do you mean like actual
Sausage.
meat? Oh.
No, sausages. So I feel like sometimes censorship is a weird thing. But I do feel like there, like, a beautiful, I mean, literature can go so deeply, and film can go so deeply that I think it can harm you. And so I think as parents or as individuals, we need to figure out what is going to do that for our children. But it's so hard to know what or how.
Maybe the point is who decides, right? Like, it's not necessarily, can't necessarily be like decided at such a high level.
No.
It needs to be more individual and personal.
Yeah, that's my.
Never thought.
I'll tell you, like, what it makes me think of is, you know, I'm a Gen Xer, so like, our parents weren't terribly present. We've heard stories about this here in our raising. So like, for me, climbing trees and falling out of trees and breaking limbs was part of the experience of growing up. Not for my kids. We've implemented tremendous harm reduction policies that have prevented my kids. Now, they look at a tree and they don't even think to climb it. You know what I mean? So did we create a better society? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, truth. I'm going to talk about truth. And this is just an idea. This is not the truth, what I'm about to say. You introduced me as a musician. You believe that to be true about me. But that represents what percent of me? Maybe 2%? So I think, you know, if you ask Dave Booth, who's Daryl, he might be able to offer another 5 or 10%. But you probably have to get a bunch of different perspectives about me to understand who I am. And that gets important when I say something that offends somebody. Because that person might be like, oh, Daryl D's like a jerk or an idiot or too loud or makes too much noise, talks too much, whatever, right? Like all those things are true. But it's only a small percent of me. And if that person is like, I don't ever want to be around that dude anymore because of this thing that happened, well, you might go, well, that's not the entirety of who he is, right? And in friendship, that's a big part of being friends. We tolerate those little 1%, 2% things of our friends. So let's think about truth in a similar way. Truth is something that I believe the Bible sets the precedent that we are meant to experience in community. So that when we interpret some scripture in a wackadoodle way, other people can go, you know what, like, maybe you think about it this way instead, right? Like that's part of the plan for how we can better interface with truth. And so what do we want? Do we want a culture, a society that is protected from things that we may not agree with and never has to deal with them? And I'll tell you, as somebody who went to Bible school, I saw what that looks like when all of, so many of folks who came out of seminary in the 80s, 90s, the divorce rates were just as high. They were doing terrible indiscretions with, guys canceling women and, so putting a person in an environment where they're protected from secular films and secular thought and secular ideas does not create a utopia, does not create a utopian society where we only make good, right, whole, godly decisions. Humanity has proven that time and time again. So what do we need? We need discourse. We need to be able to teach our children to be able to evaluate and discern what is going to lead them towards the light, towards love, towards empathy, towards a better world, which I would argue, once again, is kingdom, is the promise of kingdom. Those are the ideals that I think we want our children, our societies to be able to pull out like toffee out of the noise and the muck and all of the stuff going on, some of which is true, some of which is perhaps not. But I think we got to learn to be better discerners as opposed to just be sheltered from
That's a good
stuff that might not be
way
true.
of wrapping it
All
up.
right.
Thank you. Okay, we maybe have time for one more question because the place kids is probably getting a little squirrely in there. Okay, here we go. David. Sorry, did anyone else raise? I know you did. Okay, sorry, yes, David, go ahead.
All right. It's hard not to say this as a question rather than something I want to say, I guess.
Right. Totally.
I just want to throw this analogy, because I love analogies.
Yeah.
And I come from a background of culinary arts, as some of you may know, which is, and I don't want to talk about the artistic expression of culinary arts, but I want to think about art as food. Mm-hmm. And in terms of censorship, we can censor some things that are bad to eat. So if we think of art as something that we consume visual arts, we consume with our eyes, we consume music with our ears, we consume all of them with our mind, and physical, mental, spiritual, I think, are all taking part in the consumption of the arts, and some of them are good for us. Some of them are nourishing. Some of them are not. That doesn't mean we should never consume anything that's not good for us,
Right.
perhaps,
Yeah.
because we're missing out on maybe an experience. But when it comes to putting food into our bodies or putting anything into our mouth to consume them, there are things out there that that can kill you that if you eat them, poison, for instance, right? So in terms of what we put into our mouth, we make a decision every time we put something into our mouth to eat. Is it good for us? Does it taste good? Is it bringing me some sort of, benefit of some sort? So I think that we can make decisions when we consume art. How is this benefiting me? How can I learn from this? All of those things. And so I just thought I'd throw that analogy out there in terms of, it's not like there's Christian food and there's non-Christian food.
Right.
But some things are, like that verse about whatever is true, whatever is good, whatever is lovely. These are the things we want to eat primarily, right? Things that are good for us. But I don't think we should censor things just because, or we let our kids when they're young, if we don't let them ever eat anything that's dirty or fell on the floor or
Right.
dirt in the playground or whatever, then they're not going to build an immune system. And so that's another angle to the whole thing. So
That's good. Thank you.
But just to clarify, we shouldn't eat cheap chocolate, right? Like Hershey bars
definitely.
are no good.
For sure. Well, I think our time is up, but this is great conversation to continue on after we're done here and at our newcomers lunch and at our community lunch next week. So thank you all for sharing. It was so great. I feel just like so blessed and yeah, that was so lovely. So thank you all. And thank you everyone for being here. Alrighty.
Thoughtful.